I'm George Galloway, and I present Kalima Horra on Mayadeen television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. Kalima Horra means free word. That's what I speak. So Kalima Horra is a two-way conversation. Check it out on Mayadeen television. Welcome to Kalima Horra with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television, coming to you from London, but discussing Algeria, with, as always, an audience of distinguished experts and one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. For someone of my age, Algeria will always be a special place. The anti-colonial struggle fought by the Algerian people against the French Empire was of epic proportions. The sacrifice gargantuan. More than 1 million martyrs to be free of French colonial rule. Most of them in Algeria, some of them in France, some of them ending up floating in the River Seine in the middle of Paris. The heroism of the fighters of the Kasbah, the heroism of the women fighters of the FLN, the liberation movement of Algeria, the Front de Libération Algeria, the National Liberation Front, the woman prisoner, Jamila Bouderi, standing in a French court and uttering these words: I am an Arab Muslim woman, captive in the hands of foreigners, which she sent as an appeal to all the men of the Arab world, all those who considered themselves to be Arabs, to be Muslims, to be lovers of freedom and independence. The great leaders, one of whom, Ben Bella, God rest his soul, I became a close personal friend of, was sang to by him in his beautiful singing voice many times. A giant of a man in every sense. His successor, Boumediene, made Algeria in the 1960s one of the citadels of radical revolutionary politics, standing up against empire, standing up for the Palestinian people. Algeria was carved in our hearts. In recent decades, things have not been so clear-cut. Algeria ought to be a major player on the world stage, but is not. Algeria is the biggest country in Africa, the largest country in Africa, yet is seldom spoken of as an African power. Algeria has a huge population comparative to most Arab countries, almost 45 million. It has a high income per capita, more than $16,000 a year income per capita. It has treasures of oil and gas. It has a gigantic coastline on the Mediterranean. It ought to be a major player in Mediterranean European affairs, but it is not. What's happened to Algeria? Well, to be fair, the tides of men ebb and flow. The revolutionary nationalist politics for which they stood iconically have undoubtedly ebbed in the previous decades. And Algeria became the home to, either because of, or as a result of, or causing an insurrection of Islamist fundamentalism long before other countries knew what that phenomenon meant. Algeria had an Al-Qaeda problem before Al-Qaeda, had an ISIS problem before ISIS, either as a result of failures of the political system in Algeria, failures of the distribution of wealth in that wealthy country, or because it was unlucky, Algeria became a place where mass murder most foul became present on every street and for many years. And the defeat of that Al-Qaeda, ISIS type phenomenon was brutal and bloody. Some would say too brutal, some would say too bloody, which begat in turn a sullenness amongst a section of the population which preferred the Islamist trend to the nationalist trend. With the ebbing of revolutionary politics came the ebbing of the democratic idea. Although Algeria has a parliament, in fact, a bicameral system, although Algeria nominates and elects its president in a free election, the last one was generally adjudged by the international observers to have been free. In truth, there's not much democracy in Algeria, and the parliament doesn't call the shots. Who calls the shots in Algeria is rather like the camel, difficult to define, but easy to recognize. Le pouvoir, the power, the decision makers are regarded by the people of Algeria as a group of people not elected by them and not removable by them. A collection of people from the deep state, from the intelligence service, from the army, from the veterans of the independence struggle, though necessarily because of the march of years, they become fewer and fewer. The FLN that led this great, epic, heroic independence, freedom struggle is still in power in Algeria, but it's not the FLN that it was. And then there's the president. To give you an idea of how long President Bouteflika has been around and how old he is, let me tell you this story. When I took a red London bus from Big Ben to Baghdad in 1991, I spoke in the middle of the night in the great city of Oran in Algeria. And after I spoke, a very old man came to me and said, "You know, Che Guevara spoke in this very hall." I said, "Really?" "Yes, on the stage you just addressed us from. He came here with Bouteflika, who was the Minister of Youth in 1962. And in 2019, President Bouteflika, now as old as the hills of Algeria, is contemplating running for yet another term as President of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. That's a matter for the Algerians. It's not for me to say. But it strikes me that Algeria needs a new generation of leaders. That's all I'm going to say. And I say it with love for Algeria, for its history, for its martyrs, and for its great people. I have people in this audience who know far more than me. So let me cast the debate open, sir, with you, an expert and writer, commentator on Arabic affairs.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdallah Hamoudah. Actually, it is astounding that life has frozen not to progress in Algeria over the last 3 decades, 4 decades, after the death of Boumediene. There is a facade of democracy, like you said, but there is a shortage and lack of leadership. That raises the question as to whether this is the death of politics as people aspire to have it. Is there some kind of pluralism when everyone is trying to jockey for a place, for the blessing of the powers to be in the country. I visited Algeria last year, and it was striking to see that this country, you spoke about the resources there, but there is another major resource, and that's agriculture as well. And Algeria is a country which is potentially able to sustain itself in food, but still imports. It has lots of money, but it is in debt. It has so many political institutions, but they are without substance.
Potemkin villages.
How can this continue? I can understand the reason for discontent. And I was really surprised that the Arab Spring, so-called, did not approach Algeria. So is there any kind of mechanism which can help the Algerians protect and evolve in a different way? I'm not sure. There are so many questions. It is an enigmatic country at this stage. The powers to be are in the dark. You can't see them. They speak about the generals, they speak about the business tycoons, they speak about the deep state, and you don't see them. But how they act, does God work in mysterious ways that these people can have the country as we know it? Actually, I think that it is amongst Arab countries some kind of enigma to remain as it is, and you don't know what kind of prospect the future holds for it.
As you were talking, I had in mind a sphinx, magnificent, made of stone, unyielding, unmoving. That's what Algeria seems to me today. With all its majesty, with its stance on foreign affairs, inter-Arab affairs, generally a progressive one. They stood by Iraq, for example. They refused to turn their back on Syria. They are not a part of invading other Arab countries and seeking to overthrow them. These are magnificent characteristics. But a nation can't be made of stone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Doctor, you too are a wonderful analyst of Arab affairs. Please introduce yourself.
Dr. Halla Diyab, I'm filmmaker, analyst, and TV commentator. I'm talking about why Algeria ability is not really, fulfilled in the Middle East. First, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia have a very kind of spectator role within the Middle Eastern affairs. We do not see the North Africa countries as effectively in the Middle Eastern politics as other countries. But there is a big question here that Algeria is still under the fear of Islamism. Islamism in Algeria is very big and is very effective. Whether we have seen the impact of Algerian Islamism in Paris, in the heart of Paris with Charlie Hebdo. The two brothers were Algerian. Jamil Baghal, who was the main mindset behind the attack, was Algerian. Algeria now, unfortunately, is associated with terrorism, with Islamism, with fundamentalism. And the only way to change that is to change the political situation in Algeria, to give place for the young people in order to be part of politics, in order to be effective in their own country. And also we cannot forget that the 28% of the Algerian youth are unemployed. Now, Bouteflika is still in power because of the public fear of the rise of Islamism. We have seen that in Syria, we've seen that in Egypt, we've seen that in Libya and Tunisia. These Islamists are there and they are waiting for an opportunity to jump into the political scene. And I think that's why the political entourage behind Bouteflika are helping him to stay in power in order for this Islamic wave not to come into political scene. And the only wave that is to empower and invest in the young people, whether they are in Algeria or outside Algeria, in order to take a part in Algeria and in political scene in Algeria.
That begs a couple of questions, at least, Doctor. Let me continue with you for a moment, please. The first is why? Why is Algeria the home of such a virulent and large number of Islamist fanatics, throat-cutting fanatics? How did that come about when Algeria in the 1960s and 70s was a left-wing country with a revolutionary leadership, and the FLN was a flag? How did it come to pass? And secondly, are these Islamist fanatics best marginalized by keeping very old men in power and everything as it is, satisfactory or not, depending on who you are? Or is it by allowing the generations of Algerians to take their place in the sun, in the political sunlight?
Of course, the rise of Islamism started from 1999. But as we know that, we have seen that in Syria, we've seen that in Egypt, we've seen that in Libya. Islamic fundamentalism is part and parcel of any society, of any community, where there is political suppression, where there is any unemployment, where there is fear of freedom of speech. So when there is a wave of a new political leader, he could, like in Morocco, Morocco sounds a little bit more diverse and more stable in its ideology. And I think maybe Algeria needs a new wave of political leader who can. It has nothing to do with age. It has to do with.
No, I'm all in favor of older men taking power.
It has to. It has to do with a new spirit.
And Corbyn's even older than me.
Yeah, a new spirit to open door for people who are from left wing, who are from the right wing, who are have Islamic ideology, but also in order to also give way to people to be part of the society, part of the community. We see Algerians couldn't progress and nourish and flourish in their country because of the political suppression, lack of opportunity, plus the fear of Islamism. And I think that with a new leadership that will open doors for a new way of expressing this Islamic ideology or even political ideology.
Well, it's possible to, of course, pursue an Islamist ideology peacefully.
And in a moderate way, and in moderate way.
Morocco, the country next door, that seems to happen. I'm not sure about the ideology of the state. I'm not sure it has an ideology, the state of Morocco. It's a kind of make, do and mend philosophy, just-in-time philosophy, make a reform when you need to. But there are Islamists in power in Morocco, and they're not going around cutting people's throats. Isn't that possible in Algeria? And
don't forget that Algeria has a military Islamist ideology. It's not only that just an ideology of like, it's not a theological ideology. It's military. There are many Algerians. They carry guns and they carry. They have a lot of military operations in France, in other countries, and that is difficult because I think that in a way the political regime in Algeria, for the interest of the continuity of the political regime in Algeria, is to leave the Islamism wave in Algeria, because that will stop people from protesting, people from calling for democracy, people for pursuing freedom of speech, parliament, the youth to be part of the house, like part of politics. And I think it serves the continuity of the entourage behind Bouteflika to stay in power, is to leave the country as it is, than actually to change and to modernize this ideology.
Mind you, Parliaments are not necessarily a great thing. Libya has 4 of them, and look at the state that it's in. We'll be right back. You're watching Kalima Horra with me, George Galloway, for Mayadeen Television, coming from London, but talking about the great Algeria, its history, its present, its future. We took the Kalima Horra camera onto the streets of London to ask people what they thought. Take a look.
Many people in Algeria believe that the government there is run by the military. Do you think this style of governance is healthy for society?
No, hopefully not.
Definitely this imbalance of powers is not healthy. I mean, you cannot have militaries running a country.
For the country, I think is positive. Yeah, because now, you know, a lot of things dangerous.
Can you see any positives in having a military model of governance?
No. Like, that's the simplest thing. There's lots of, we can see a lot from history that as soon as you move on to militaristic, then it has a lot of ramifications, both in the social and governmental, so I would say definitely not.
A lot of the younger generation in Algeria feel disenfranchised with the system.
Yeah.
Given that's the case, do you think that there's a future for this kind of governance if the young people are not on board?
Definitely not. I feel like there's a lot of even disenfranchisement in the UK with the young people, and it's definitely not going to work.
I think young people will find their way as they did in Arab Springs. I mean, I believe they will have probably a way of coming into policies once the pressure becomes unbearable.
I believe there's not much future with regards to this because the younger generations are going to be taken over in the future.
Do you think there is a danger from Islamist factions inside Algeria in the coming election?
Yes, yes, I'm sure. Because a lot of, you know, a lot of men in the mountain, and it's dangerous. Yes, I think so. Because we are near to Algeria and we have this problem now. Yes, because a lot of tourists come to Tunisia from Algeria.
Well, a mixed bag, quite a lot of interest there. Sir, what would you like to say?
Thank you very much, Walid. I really disagree with the lady next to me. I would say we're not really feared from any Islamic fear or like she said, people are wearing, like carrying guns, or we don't have anything like this. But
this lady seemed to think they were in the mountains.
We don't have any mountains. Well, this is a story.
I've been on them.
Well, we don't. I'm next to the city. I live not far from Algiers, but we don't have anything now. It was before, and now I think every Algerian knows the games that it was before and now. It's a big changes now. Now there is Facebook, there is Google, there is YouTube. We can see everything. What's happened? What they used to tell us is completely different. That's wrong. All the word from the outside Algeria, as you said, Algeria, it's a continent. It's not a country, and it's really everything. Everything is wrong. Everything, the bad management, the lack of management from the current government. Exactly, they lead the young people to disappear, to leave the country. When I was 15, I had this question when I was in college here, about 2016 or 17. Well, one of the teachers told us, "Can you please write what was your dream?" I was really shy. I was going to say, but my dream was, as far as I realized, and I knew what I'm doing, I want to leave the country. And the same as Algerian people, young people, they despair everywhere, they lose the hope, so they just want to leave the country. They don't want to stay there. And about Islamic terrorists, well, no, not really, we're completely different. I'm not really saying to say, oh, we are the best. No, we are the least, because we need to be more brave. Well, we are brave, I would say, because if you know that you're going to die in the sea, about 50%, you're not going to achieve the other side from the continent, and you're going to take a risk. You're going to make 5 or 7 people with you, with like, let's make some money and let's go to boats, small boats, and leave the country. That's a big, this is brave. We are brave. We're really new
and yet
generation.
Algeria is a rich country. There should be a future for all of its young people at home.
I believe this is not really for us, for the Algerian people, for the government, for people who are really got influence there, ministers. This is not for the Algerian people, because poverty is everywhere now there. Do you believe, Mr. Galloway, now 2019, people are queuing. If you don't wake up early morning, I'm talking in the capital, I don't know. I'm not going to take you somewhere else in the desert. No, I'm just talking in capital. 2019, people queuing to buy milk. That's why they want the system, this system, and this government. They just want Algerian. Think about water. Think about milk, bread. They don't think much. Just focus on these things. Because if you give them all these things, they will think about, oh, why we're not like others? Why we're not like other countries? And that's how this current government. I mean, they were the. I don't know, the lack of their management, they really make everyone leave the country. There is no hope. You study or you don't study, just leave the country. Just leave the country.
That's very, very sad. This lady here.
I want just to add to Mr. Walid about what he's saying, as because I'm student here and studying politics, but I'm not going to talk from the perspective of being a citizen, Algerian citizen. Exactly what you all have said, that Algeria is, well, in comparison with other countries, is a stable country, and is much better than other countries, like similar countries, like Arab countries or even the neighbors. So, but what we want to show is that the new generation now, or the previous generation, they want to change. They want to see changes. They are very tired of having the same system, the same ideology, the same way of thinking.
How would you characterize their ideology? Because I don't understand the language.
I would characterize like a very old and like expired ideology. Is not working nowadays. It's like if you use like a printer in a very old way, in a very old city, and then you still use it, and you expect a new results. And this printer is not working at the right time at our present. That we need something new. We need to see. We need to go ahead to be like a very developed countries. I mean, why not? If you go to Algeria and you ask, I'm talking about the citizen, not talking about the system, the power system, because power system they are having in their mind to stay or to go in the same way without changing, and they want to keep the same system as it is for longer and longer. We need to change. Change is always good. In anything, this is the nature of our lives.
Well, not all change is good, is it? I mean,
well, not all of, but it's the nature.
Doctor was saying one of the reasons for this ossification of the regime is fear that this black decade to which you refer will return. That's a legitimate fear, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. This is a fear, but is
you don't
not.
Want to end up like Libya.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even like Libya or Syria or Iraq or all of those. Now the Algerian people, they are mature. They know what to do. But as you said, that there is a fear, the little fear that stops them of being to go against the power regime. So, but this is still like it's not solution. I mean, it's not still like something going wrong behind.
And of course, the argument exists that by clamping down, by being a sphinx, actually, when change does happen, it will inevitably be more violent. Doctor, you want to respond?
I mean, first I want to go back to the gentleman said. We need to first to check facts. You know, I work with Jamestown Foundation's think tank organization that report to governments about militant jihadists. And we work on analysis of jihadists in Syria and majority, and there is a big number of jihadists who went to Syria, and they are on leadership level. On senior level, they came from Algeria. Going back in history, since 2000, since September 11, Algerian jihadists were active in the Islamic fundamentalism scene on senior level. We not only in Charlie Hebdo, but also even in England, there was this Algerian guy in 2000 something where he found in the boot of the car, if you remember that, there's a bomb in his shoes, and that is a problem that is rooted inside the country. It's not to blame the Algerian people. I mean, we have extremism in every country, in Egypt, in Libya, in Syria. It's because of the political suppression. Because moderate Islam has no place to revive. Moderate leaders, like people cannot see Islam as a faith they enjoy. And the political regime, the political suppression affected terrorism and affected fundamentalism in the country. Another problem is the lack of community work, grassroots. How can we create leadership in Middle East? Through community work. How many grassroots community work we have in Algeria? We don't have much. For example, sport community work. How can we create leaders from the community? There's not much funding given to the people to create. People only go to the mosque. Do people go to the stadium? How many Riyad Mahrez we have in Algeria, who is, a very strong Premier League footballer? The country and the community should invest in leaders like that, and that will pull the country from fundamentalism, from Islamic fundamentalism, and we have a lot of leaders that will replace Bouteflika and thousands of political, we can say like dictators. But the problem, why political dictatorship is very deeply rooted, because these Islamic fundamentalists and terrorists are like cockroaches. The moment you raise your foot, they will rise up, same as they did in Syria. They always blame Bashar al-Assad. They always blame Saddam Hussein. They always blame Gaddafi. Okay, Gaddafi has gone. Saddam Hussein has gone. Did that create a good society, good community? No. What we need is moderate Islam to come, a faith to be part of life, not suppression. Faith is not cutting throats, and it's not suppressing Christians and Alawite and Shia. Faith is for all. Faith is about tolerance. What we need is equality, freedom, community, love for sport. People go to stadium. People go to community work. That's what we need. That's what we create leaders. Not to say, no, we don't have terrorists. Really? Check your facts.
What about the party itself? The
Political
FLN
parties.
was really something. You're too young to remember, but the FLN was really something. But now it's a Potemkin village. It's a cardboard front, isn't it? The FLN is not actually a living organism, and it's not actually ruling the country.
But if you look at Algeria, is not only a country that in its own in the space. It's surrounded by Tunisia, Libya, Morocco. What's happening in Egypt? Everything happening around the Middle East is affecting that beautiful country. But yet, this country, similarly, I can see it, is on a wheelchair. That where Bouteflika is sitting.
That's a very good
and
metaphor.
It's not moving forward. And what you need is really to push this long-rooted ideology of suppression, of extremism, of lack of tolerance, of rigid.
These are two sides of the same coin. On one side, there is repression and dictatorship, though I wouldn't put Algeria quite in that category, certainly by comparison with others. But the other side of that coin is extremism, and in this case, Islamist extremism that we have seen in this black decade. It's a conundrum, all right. We'll be right back. This is Kalima Horra in London talking about Algeria, its past, its present and its future. Madame.
Hello. I'd just like to say twice I've heard, Tammy Al-Kabani, sorry, by the way, twice I've heard Arab Spring mentioned, and I would say don't worry to any country that's talking about Arab Spring, because the US will probably have something in store, and Algeria being the second largest exporter of gas, especially to Europe, I'm sure they're going to be quite high on the list. And I think we're making a lot of statements here about Islamic fundamentalists and Islam, and while I understand there are Islamic fundamentalists, I think we've got a short memory when it comes to colonial rule. Under French colonial rule, the Muslim population, 12%, got less than 12% of money. European settlers did a land rush over to Algeria. And a land rush is where you take the land by whatever means, and usually through death, through beheadings, through the most horrific violence. And they were not Islamic. They were not Islamist jihadists. They were coming as European settlers as Christians, and that went on for hundreds of years. So we've got very short memories if now all we're judging Algeria by is Islamic fundamentalists. And I think one thing that's important to remember is that the current president of Algeria has lived through those times and probably remembers those times.
He was a fighter for liberation.
And while the younger generation are saying we're bored, France used to allow unlimited young male men to, but not females, just males, to travel to France because they could do hard labour, they were given free passage. Muslims were not given passage to France. In fact, there were many, they were told if you come to France, you have to renounce being a Muslim. If you come to France, you are no longer a Muslim. And so many Muslims stood their ground and said, actually, I'm not going to go then. So actually, the Algerian people have been very proud. And I think the fact we're sitting here talking about Islamic fundamentalists, jihadists, it is exported. France, Europe, UK, America are one of the biggest exporters of terrorism, because they pay. Whoever wants to go, France used to send over its criminals to Algeria. They sent the working class over to Algeria. That's what they did. They exported people to Algeria to take land off the Algerians.
Well, that's very important historical perspective, Tammy. I need to move on for reasons of time. The lady in front.
Afnan Al-Kafaji. In regards to what the doctor said here, sorry, if you remind me of your name. Halla, Dr. Halla. Just coming from a younger person perspective, thinking about the people living in Algeria, especially the younger generations, with the lack of employment for those people, I think it's very difficult to kind of form this new flourishing society of new leaders and people who can, take over from someone who's been, in office since 99. I think it's very difficult when you're already living in such harsh conditions to, become these new Olympics and go stadiums and just grow and flourish. It's difficult with him in office for a fifth time. So I think definitely change is crucial for the flourishing of the society, and hopefully get a stronger leadership where very little foreign intervention takes place, I think.
Thank you. It is, this lady here, it is important to just bear in mind Algeria is one of the richer Arab countries. It has an average income of $16,000 a year. That's not a king's ransom, but it's not actually far away from many European levels of income. Madame.
Yeah. You're right. She is one of the richer countries, but this is the main problem that people now suffering. Why our country is rich but we are poor? That's the contrast. I mean, the contradiction between why we are suffering of having like a very range of like a salary, a very minimal. If you compare it with for example, European countries, is nothing. So, but if you compare the wealth that we have and the other countries, European countries, that is you cannot compare it. This is where we can find the contradiction between.
Don't you have still a high social wage going back to the socialist period? Things like health and education and
we
so
don't on. Yeah, we don't have any problem with having like to go to hospital because everything is free and even the education is free. But what the quality, not the quantity. The quality of education, how it is.
That's true in all socialist economies.
Is very
lots of quantity, not so much quality.
Yeah, exactly. This is the whole point. Is if the government give me the free education, but it doesn't give me the high level of education, then there is no point.
But there are huge parts of the world where they don't give education at all. That's the only point.
Yeah, but I'm concerned about the whole Algeria, because Algeria is the only country that I can
no, you're quite right.
say about and I can reclaim and defend. Yeah. So this, I mean, a very contradiction between what we have and what we are having, but between what we are, I mean, what we are expecting, but what we're having like right now. I mean, is not very helpful, or as are all of the nothing it can be make our people happy.
No.
Yeah, that's no. The only. And even I want to talk about another one point is the elections. That is our discussion today. Is that now today people they are not. They don't believe that they are going on the day of the election they're going to elect, because they don't know who is going to vote for. This is the huge, destructive point. So whether they don't go or they go just, and then they believe that this someone he's going to have the term, and that's it. And they don't have the opportunities or the equal opportunities. I mean, like I'm going to vote for FLN, for example. That means I strongly believe that this is the hope, and this is the future of the country. But the problem is not the case.
Yeah. Walid, briefly.
Yeah, I want to talk about the dictator Bouteflika. He's been in power since 1999.
You mean the freedom fighter Bouteflika, without whom the French would still be ruling you?
Well, I don't call him like that, but I call him as a dictator.
You should. Well, he might be a dictator, but a bit of respect would be in order. Because if not for the FLN and the martyrs and the strugglers and the fighters, France would still be ruling you.
Well,
you wouldn't have free education, I promise you that.
Well, that's true. That's good. But we are getting free education. They're not really giving us we are a rich country, as you mentioned before. So he's on the wheelchair now. Do you think that Algerians are everywhere around the world? We have inventors, we have educated people. They cannot run the country. Believe me, if this government will go, after 10 years, you will see Algeria where and now. I'm not going to say 10 years, just 5 years. We're going to take the corruption on side, and then you will see Algeria. You will see the freedom, you will see the reality of Algerians. I'll say about... You will say about, she mentioned the doctor before, sorry about to go back again. She mentioned one of the Algerians, he's got something bam. We're not going to go, you mentioned as well, Riyad Mahrez, I'm not going to go to any Algerian done something. Maybe he born somewhere else, like Zidane. Zidane was the greatest player in France. When he beat the Italian player in the world, they said, oh, he's Algerian. No, come on, we're not going to go like that. If it's like that,
no, President Chirac said he was the greatest living Frenchman.
Well, they were, but they made...
Chirac said that at the Elysee when he came back.
Yeah, but Riyad Mahrez, if you go back to him, well, he's a very good player and we're proud of him, but he born in France and he played in his whole his life.
He presents himself as Algerian.
Yes, of course he does, because he is. I am Algerian too.
Algerian flag in the stadium.
Yes.
King Power on the championship.
Well,
I do respect.
Well, I do agree with you, but
respect your country.
But no, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking the same thing that you're mentioning something and you go back. I'm talking about. You can't say any Algerians done something good or whatever he born here or in I don't know where, in Ecuador or wherever it is. You're gonna say to oh, he's Algerian. No, you're gonna see a terrorist is terrorist. If you mention France, they still destroying our country. They still taking our wealth from our people. Our people, they're dying in the sea because of them. They are part of the games.
And in Charlie Hebdo,
well, both of these things are true.
They were to Algeria
Madame,
on the council of France, taking money from the French government and then bombing and killing children and women in the name of Islam.
Well, no, you are doing a huge mistake. You don't know what mistake. You're saying
Walid, both of these things are true. Algeria has produced great things, and it has also, like all other countries, produced bad people.
Yeah, I do agree
with
you.
Just like our country and France and every other country.
Yeah, but if you can't say Muslim, Algerian Muslims, this is not, you can't put religion on it. Otherwise we'll say Christian. No, we're not talking about religion here. I think only retired people and ignorant will mention religion about, the word now is 2019. People are really thinking how they invent the moon.
An Islamist fanatic group called FIS fought a decade-long civil war in your country, and they massacred tens of thousands of people in the most brutal way. Final word from Dr. Abdallah. What do you think? It seems a clear dichotomy here. The young people are very dissatisfied. They forgot where they came from. And by the way, not ancient history. The Beatles were #1 in the hit parade, as we call it when you get to my age. Yes. When France was still murdering people in the liberation struggle. But now we can talk of them as dictators in wheelchairs. You see the anger that exists amongst the young people.
Absolutely. I think at the point of concluding this part of the program, I feel much richer through the discussion. And
it's been good.
I will throw to the debate for the future by the people who will see this program 3 points. The first one is that the youth see that we now live at the era of post-ideology. And I think it is wrong to leave it as post-ideology. Let us call it efficiency of management and being practical. Because without ideology or some framework of thinking, you fall into populism, which can be destructive, not constructive. The second point is that for the future, there is an importance to try and activate politics at the local level. If you activate politics at the local level, you will have to go with it up to the government level, and you have a lively political life. And that will take me to the third point, which will mean that people, young people, need to be empowered with hope to avoid despair and feel the need to leave their own country.
It was heartbreaking to hear of an exodus of people from a gas and oil-rich country with a huge GDP, with a territory larger than any other state in all of Africa, with all these tasks that their people can be doing, that many young people, Walid says, are just shipping out as soon as they can. It's quite a heartbreaking thought, that.
Sure.
So, in conclusion, should President Bouteflika run again? If he doesn't, is there anyone of his stamp in the ranks, or are we looking at the abolition of that generation and of that ideology?
I think the right thing for President Bouteflika is to call it a day and not to run for a 5th term. He's 81. He is not well. I don't think he can exercise the powers of his office very well. And I think it is time to go. There are people like Yahya, And there is someone else like Khalil Shakib and many others, but they don't like to run against Bouteflika. If Bouteflika goes gracefully, then these two people and probably others will have the initiative to stand, and we may have a real democratic election.
Inshallah. Well, look, that's the end of the discussion. It was much livelier than I expected it to be, and I'm grateful to you all for that. I wish nothing but the best for the people of Algeria. They're in my heart. Their country is in my heart. The FLN are initials carved in my heart. I've been George Galloway. This has been Kalima Horra on Al Mayadeen Television. Thanks for watching.